your boy Ancient Albatross here again with the Cypher Unlimited crew. We have our usual suspects of AD or Alpha Dean. We have Spigs18 or Anthony. And Dean, what are we doing here tonight?
Oh man, another top 10 show. Nice to have us all back together. So we decided to ask the community about some systems and ideas and mechanics and flavors that they might put into their Cypher System games from other games. So we reached out, and surprisingly, the response that rolled in far faster than we ever expected. So without further ado, Anthony, let's get this party started.
Yep. Well, before we even get started, I just want to say a very special thank you to everyone that participated in our survey on Twitter. Like Dean said, our responses came fast and furious. We will hit you up on Twitter, Facebook, and of course the Cypher Unlimited Discord. And in only 2.5 days, we had a total of 132 people give us their favorite role-playing games they like to incorporate into in their Cypher System sessions. And the only criteria that we asked was any game that you either use the mechanics from, adopted the setting to Cypher, or just plain tried to capture the tone and feel of the original game into a Cypher game. They were allowed, of course, to submit more than one answer, and many of you did. And I was blown away by the amount of great RPGs that were mentioned. We had a total of 46 different RPGs receive at least one vote, which is amazing to me in like 2 days. So before we even hit our top 10, I just think it's fair to mention that we had two games that just missed the top 10 by one vote. So these two games will be our honorable mentions. So one of you guys want to mention the first honorable mention?
Yeah, okay. Well, first one was Paranoia by Mongoose Publishing. Paranoia by Mongoose Publishing. So the blurb about the game, excuse me?
How many votes did it get?
They got 4 votes. So, like you said, one less than to make the cut. So the opening blurb for Paranoia says, trust the computer. The computer is your friend. You are a troubleshooter. Congratulations. And as a troubleshooter, you are a member of Alpha Complex's most expendable elite force. Tasked with finding trouble and shooting it, you will be hunting mutants, terrorists, traitors, and classified things, secret societies, renegade, bots, deviant AIs, which these things are all redacted. And you'll also save Alpha Complex from its greatest threat, unless you accidentally become Alpha Complex's greatest threat.
All right. I just jotted down so Dean and Al, I should have mentioned this before we went on air, but this is the CU stream and we always do F-ups. But the stuff in the red that I put underneath the notes is, I just jotted down what some of the responses were from people's entries of why they voted for this, right? Mm-hmm. So the Paranoia got 4 votes, and I think all 4 people said they converted the setting of Paranoia into Cypher System. Like, first and foremost, I think that was like why they voted for it. They also, we had 2 or 3 people mention the bluffing-based combat card system that they incorporated or somehow managed to make Paranoia fit into the Cypher System, and the computer-generated die.
So, being that I've played Paranoia in the past, those things really make a lot of sense to put in there. Like, especially the computer-generated die. That could be just another way of using GM intrusions. You can just, flip it on its ear and make the GM intrusions computer-generated die. But it's also basically that you build up a pool that you as a GM can pull from. So it could, if you could turn it into a XP pool or whatever. As far as the bluffing and base combat card system, cards are a staple of Cypher. So
the bluffing based combat system is from the 6th edition Paranoia, right? That's
yes.
the newest version.
That's the newest version. I'm not completely familiar with it. I mean, because I haven't played 6th edition. I have the book over there, just haven't read it through. But my understanding of that is basically that you can kind of, you can kind of trick the system, if you will, and it's kind of a bluff type deal that you have, and I guess the cards will exacerbate or help the situation.
Lord and Lady Mills brought up an awesome point in chat. She said that you could use player intrusions to force actions on other players. That's very Paranoia-like.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I haven't played this one, so I can't really say too much about it.
Here's the thing.
Paranoia is an awesome setting, just period. But
Yeah, it sounds cool from what I've heard of it.
We're talking about the two mechanical things that people mentioned, but the setting itself is amazing. Other things that you can adopt from Paranoia, bring it into Cypher System, and Cypher kind of already did it with first responders by building a team. Well, in Paranoia, you have clones. So you could literally have your players make, 4 or 5 different characters. They're clones of the same person, but they have a different job. Each one could be a different type because you could put them into a different, specialty or what have you. So that could be something else that you take from, Paranoia, bring it into the game, running it as a setting.
Essentially, Paranoia, Al, is there's a mother computer, right, that controls every aspect of your life, but she's he or they or the benevolent, overseer of this world, but they are untrusting, and everything that you do could lead to you dying, right?
So basically, the computer is completely paranoid.
The whole purpose of the game is for you to have the other players die, and you stay alive as long as possible. So you basically screwing everybody you're playing with. You know what I mean? To get them to get the computer to kill them or punish them. So Paranoia it's the ultimate party RPG.
Yeah, the computer is completely paranoid. Everything and everybody's like. We were playing one time, and that was back in the good old days of Ninja Notes before we had, cell phones. Now it would be really cool to run Paranoia, but having cell phones and make that part of the game. And that's how you send messages, because the computer sends messages to you. So, like, we were playing the one time, and we're in a bar. We went in to check something out. I drink a drink, and then across my palm pad, I get, the drink you just had is poisoned. Kill the guy sitting next to you to get the antidote. And it was one of the players, it's like, kill Charlie 19. What? So it's stuff like that. The game is great.
So, you could definitely, I think you could actually pretty convert Paranoia 1-to-1 using intrusions, player and GM intrusions, pretty straightforward. I'm not 100% positive, and I'm sure chat and whoever's watching this YouTube video, I own the latest edition of Paranoia. I've never played, so I'm not entirely sure what the bluffing-based card system is. So if someone in chat or someone let us know exactly how that works, but I'm curious to see. I'm actually, this is a side tangent. Just when I was making this list, I owned every game on this list with the exception of one, but it made me feel hella bad because I didn't remember half the mechanics of some of these games in the book. So I was like, damn shit, I got to go back and read all these other books.
Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. I need to go back and read some of them again because, I have them all too. But again, it's the same issue.
But yeah, I could definitely see why Paranoia got some votes because it's, even if you didn't want to play in the Cypher System, it's just a hell of a fun game. And it's like a great party game. Friend computers out to get you. Right. So you want to do the second honorable mention before we get into our top 10 list?
Yeah, I'll dive in on that. 1 second, because I'm controlling also the images and I need my notes. But second on the list here, which also got 4 votes, is Star Wars from Fantasy Flight. Fantasy Flight Games. I was saying it right. And a little blurb from them says, "Step into the Star Wars universe. Enjoy thrilling adventures in the Star Wars universe with any or all of 3 different Fantasy Flight Games Star Wars role-playing systems: Age of Rebellion, Edge of the Empire, and Force and Destiny. And the main things that people really like to use from that in Cypher System are the dark and light side points, converting the setting to Cypher. I think we're going to see that a lot on this list because that's super easy to do.
And it's freaking
why not?
slow.
Yeah, exactly. And then the last thing was equipment and vehicle lists. And I'll let you guys chime in more on this because this is a game I actually have never touched and I don't know anything about Star Wars.
This is a game that I've actually played quite a few times, and you know, it has its own proprietary dice, which is not something that you're going to be able to convert to Cypher. But other than that, I happen to really like the Fantasy Flight games. I would have actually voted on this if I would have thought about it when this might have been one of my votes if I would have thought about it. For some reason, it just didn't hit my mind. But I think the biggest thing that people like, first of all, people try to convert Star Wars. Let me just say this first and foremost. People try to convert Star Wars into any RPG they're playing in the history of RPG. They invented Dungeons and Dragons in what, 1972?
74.
Or 74, and then 2 days later, somebody was trying to make a Star Wars. Like, that's what Star Wars tries to get converted into every RPG. So I was not surprised this got some votes.
Let me correct you, Anthony.
I know.
Not 2 days later, because 70. I know. No, I get it. I get it. It was 2 days later, you know, when George Lucas had to dream about Star Wars, you know, even though he didn't make the movie till 77.
I know, dude. He was about to be the old Groundhog Debbie Downer and just ruin the joke. But
what I can say about...
But that was my point, is that everyone needs to put Star Wars in every RPG they play.
And it is a fact. Like even me, who's like not really in the like the fandom or whatever, I see this. Like everybody wants to put Star Wars in everything. It's just a fact.
So I would bet a free set of dice that if you go into any Discord server dedicated to any game system, right?
Somebody's put it in Star Wars.
If you scroll long enough, I don't care what OGL, I don't care what OSR, what system there's somebody talking about, hey, how do we do Star Wars in this system?
And here's the cool part about...
I ran Star Wars with Cypher System. No.
Well, we've all done it. I mean,
I ran it on stream on our channel.
Yeah. I was going to say, as far as this is concerned, a lot of the stuff that they're talking about, of course, we know about converting the setting. The equipment and vehicle list, you can't go wrong with that and easily convert it for you know, Cypher System. But the idea of dark and light side points, the idea of dark side, light side in general, there's so many different ways you can handle that.
I can tell you how
the
actual mechanic works, and it's an easy one-to-one. In the Fantasy Flight Star Wars, it's essentially like a GM intrusion, but it's like a super GM intrusion. But there's only one, right? And anytime, like if your group is playing Jedi or good characters, right? You start the game with one light side point, and you all can decide as a group when to use it. And it's essentially a super intrusion. Like you could change the narrative dramatically in your favor, right? But the minute you use it, that point goes to the dark side. So now the GM can now somewhere across the session dramatically change the narrative. Use it, so it's basically a one-to-one intrusion that gets passed around the table. It's a very simple mechanic.
Right, and what would be cool, I mean, there's so many ways you could implement that in your game. Like, for example, I would say, like with a light side point, when it happens, you know what, I'd let every player at the table add to that intrusion. You know, if they came up, so that way it would be that dramatic.
That's exactly what it is the whole group.
You're right. Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying I would go around the table. I'm just saying how I would use it. I know what it is. That's what I'm saying. How I would use it. You know, because we know that.
I'm just saying that that's all right. Yeah, it's essentially that way. But that's exactly what it is. The whole table changes the group as an action, and then the GM gets a turn, and it works the other way around. Because you could also, in Fantasy Flight Star Wars, you could play Sith or evil characters. So you would start the game with a dark side point and the GM has a light side point.
Right.
Anthony, do you want to jump right in with the number 10 on our list here that people voted for as their top 10 RPGs used for inspiration in Cypher System?
Are you guys ready for the top 10 list? Shadowrun by Catalyst Game Labs. They had a total of 5 votes. Shadowrun is a role-playing game unlike any other improvisational theater. A game master runs the game while a group of players pretend they are characters set in a dystopian near future of 2080. The characters are created by the players, giving a history and personality, and then further designed by a set of statistics that represent the character's skills and attributes as developed in the character creation process. The game master then presents the setting and situation through their characters. The players interact with the storyline and other characters, developing their own stories and high adventure during every game session. Shadowrun 6 World. Shadowrun is more than a simple role-playing game. It's a unique and dynamic universe, is proactive with overarching storylines, twisting and shaping the universe as additional source books are released. This creates a vibrant, breathing universe in which players can carve out their own street cred and amass a mass reputation, all the while reaching out for the megacorps, dragons, and other world-level threats that can cut their careers short, deadly short. So that's the description for Shadowrun. So this came up with 5 votes, guys. They said the reasons why people said that they like this, once again, converting the Shadowrun setting to Cypher, street cred mechanics, and weapon and equipment lists. What do you guys take on Shadowrun?
Go ahead, Al.
No, I mean, I guess this my thing is gonna be quick because another one on this list I have not played or read. All I know is that people love the setting, and what I hear is they don't like the rules as much. So it makes sense that this is on the list. Cypher System being what it is, very easily malleable into what you want it to be. So people take Shadowrun and they play it in Cypher System, and I've heard the tale many times. It's a very popular one for that. Yeah.
Well, one thing with Shadowrun that, like we always talk about, a lot of these games, came about at a different time. So when those games were coming out, it was all about, people coming up with their own mechanics and so on and so forth, but they made rich settings. And, it was like before there was the time like we had GURPS and stuff like this, you just had these games, and Shadowrun is one of those games that just fit, and it resonates. So of course, as pulling the setting in, I'm absolutely all for it. The equipment list, that's something else Shadowrun is known for. Probably Star Wars is the only game that has as much, as far as equipment lists, in comparison. Shadowrun they actually used to come out with books that were just like corporation. They were like old-fashioned catalogs where you could just have stuff for people to buy. Great stuff. So yeah.
I've never played Shadowrun 6 World. I played Shadowrun today. I think everyone has. I think Shadowrun, if you're an old Grognog, Shadowrun was a lot of people's introductory to cyber, cyber tech style games while still staying in the fantasy genre. And the hook always was, hey, I know you're playing D&D. You want to play D&D in the future? You know what I mean? So like that caught because Shadowrun did have elves and trolls and everything else. It had cyberpunk style gear, like they said, like Mulhouse said in chat. But it had fantasy characters. So so it has a nostalgia value, So I could see, I think nostalgia plays a big part in this entire top 10 list, because you remember fondly the adventures you had in these old game settings, but you don't want to go back to the mechanics because you like Cypher System, so you look to convert a lot of the great adventures you had. Be like, oh yeah, I really want to play Shadowrun, but I'm not sure if I want to play Shadowrun the game. Right. And I do it in Cypher.
And the street cred mechanic actually is kind of cool because I could think of a couple of ways to use that. In Shadowrun, street cred is you earn points, and your street cred is equal to those number of points divided by like 10 rounded up. And in the game, in Shadowrun, you use dice pools. So street cred gets to add dice to your pools. Well, in Cypher System, you could do the same thing, but I was seeing it more as your street cred would be kind of like 3 levels of effort, if you will.
Or free assets.
Free assets, right. Yeah. Free asset, free level of effort. I could just see it being used in that manner, or it would become your caveat. It'd be like a free XP point, so you could use it for a free recovery roll, you could use it for a free re-roll, whatever, but that's what your street cred does for you. There's more ways to put that into Cypher and use it in other places, but just the idea of taking that baseline concept is so cool.
Yeah, I wasn't shocked that Shadowrun made this list, because I know Shadowrun, even though I haven't played any of the later editions with a lot of these old style games, and there's going to be a couple more on this list, but I can understand the nostalgia and the love for this setting.
Oh yeah,
and the lore is ridiculous. If they have tons of books on the lore of Shadowrun. Oh, so the site is so easy to convert settings to. I can understand why people would want to jump at the chance to do Shadowrun and Cypher.
All right.
Okay.
No, I was just ready to start to talk about the next one, but go ahead.
And once again, weapons and equipment list hits this thing. And I'll talk about that in the end, but I think there's going to be some common themes that this list actually brought to my attention that I wasn't sure I had those opinions before I actually started tabulating this list. So do you want to do number 9, Dean?
Sure. Number 9 is a surprise, but it's not, at least for me. And it's Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition, Wizards of the Coast. It got 8 votes. And I say it's a surprise because I know, even myself, I've maligned this game over the years. But after talking with a few people, and even talking with Anthony and Al, the realization is it's not so much that Dungeons and Dragons 4E was a bad game, it just wasn't D&D. And it tried to do certain things that really didn't work. It had to be rebranded and rethought about how they were going to deliver those things. But then once you delve into the game itself, you realize it had a lot to offer. So people said minion rules, at-will abilities, movement, and gridded combat mechanics are some of the things that they were looking at bringing to the Cypher system. And I can expand on that list as well, because there are a lot of aspects that 4E did correctly. The idea of abilities that characters could just do things that were within their wheelhouse. Like Anthony was saying, rogues should all be able to pick locks and pick pockets. That's part of their deal. It may not be their main thing. It may not be their specialty, but they should all be able to do it because that's part of their shtick, But yeah. I can ramble. Anthony, go ahead, take over. I'll come back to other points.
You didn't read the bio, but no one needs a bio for 4th edition anyway.
That's why I didn't read it, because it's D&D.
Yeah. But just for those that don't know, 4th edition came out in 2007. I believe it had the shortest run of any Dungeons and Dragons set. It only ran for it came out, I think they stopped doing it in 2012 or 2013, so it had a 5 or 6 year run. One of the big reasons why is pretty much what Dean said. I personally think when it came out, and I'm guilty of this as well, when it came out, I wasn't the biggest fan, right? But as I left the system and realized all the innovation they added to Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing in general, I appreciate 4th edition way more now than I ever did when I was playing it when it was out. You know, the biggest ones are cantrips and the minion. Like cantrips, you know, like Dean said, 2nd edition had cantrips, but it didn't have the free spells you got in 4th edition. And you know, it made wizards way cooler to play. It made warlocks way cooler to play. It made any of the cleric classes way cooler to play. And like what they said in chat, the minion mechanic, I use the minion rule in every game I play. And that essentially is those are one-hit baddies. You just want there to fill up the narrative in the scene, but you want them to, they don't have to roll damage. Once they're hit, they're dead, they're gone. That's it. You just need it to fill up, you know, when you narrate the scene to make it seem like it's populated.
And you also use it, you know, it also helps the players feel powerful. You know, it added a narrative cinematic element to Dungeons and Dragons that before wasn't there. A lot of what Anthony is saying about like with the at-will powers and stuff like that, those were great innovations. You know, I just don't think the delivery was done right because it wasn't until, because there are a lot of things from 4th edition that made it to 5th edition. They've just been rebranded. They've been, you know, given a new name. And I don't think a lot of people understand, you know, or know that. But something else that they did, they made the idea of understanding how to make a monster, even at low level, even like something as simple as goblins and kobolds and stuff like that. Their monster books are brilliant because they gave them depth. And you can take those things, if you have those old books, you can actually take that information and apply it to your new stuff. You know, if you want a dragon in your Cypher game or, you know, something like that, use those monsters the way they're statted out. Don't even worry about the stats. Just look at the abilities. Brilliant.
The only thing I will say about what people were saying in 4th edition that were asking for their Cypher system, I'm kind of gonna do a little like a boohoo on, is there was 2 or 3 people that asked for gridded combat and more defined movement rules in Cypher, and my answer to that is probably no, thank you. Like, yeah. But I understand coming from 4th edition why they would want to add it to Cypher System, but that's where I draw the line. You know what I mean? I don't want.
I agree.
Combat in my Cypher System.
You know, it's funny. I've basically always used for D&D whenever I run fantasy games, even with Cypher. You know, I'll still put down you know, a hex map or, you know, a battle map or whatever, and I don't necessarily use grids. I just break the bands up. You know, a short range is a square, you know, or should I say, you know, immediate distance is 1 square distance. If you're within 1 square, and then, you know, I might have 5, just to make it easy, but I don't go in depth with it. Like you were saying, that's like a no-no.
Just to clarify, I'm not saying that gridded combat doesn't work in Cypher System, because I see what I'm saying is that I personally I'm not, I like maps. I'm just personally, I don't want to go back to the days of counting boxes, counting squares, and pulling out the ruler. Or, you know,
right? Exactly. I mean, I don't want to. I'm not trying to sit there. I'm not playing Warhammer. You know what I'm saying? I don't care. I don't need my laser pointer so I can get line of sight and all of that. No, you don't have to go through all that.
Not necessarily Warhammer, but I think that if I want to play a gridded combat game, I'm gonna play a game that does it better.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, that was built for it. Mm. You know, and the one other thing that I would like to point out that 4E did extremely well, not only were the information on monsters, but the idea, it was the first game with the D&D label that your characters didn't start out totally, you know, that were totally incompetent, you know, one hit die wonders, because the way they did hit points was a little bit more, your character felt a little bit more hardy. He was, you know, more capable. You had more tools to start the game with in some respects. So I think that's something else that kind of appeals to Cypher people with fourth edition and vice versa.
Yeah, and just to go back before we leave for 4th edition, I think fourth edition is an extremely innovative game, and I think that we've said this all the time, said it multiple times. If it wasn't called Dungeons and Dragons, I think people would still be playing fourth edition to this day heavy because they did it. They did a lot of things right.
Right. They really did. I mean, and like I said, if I were to look at it not as D&D, like we said, looking at it now, it even has application that you could actually run other genres. It has more of a universal appeal, the way the ideology behind it, if you ask me.
Yep.
So,
All right, so let's go to number 8 on the list. Al, you want to read number 8? I happen to really like this game.
Yeah, so number 8, I'll read that one. It's one I want to pick up. I probably will pick it up next paycheck actually. But number 8 with 9 votes is Index Card RPG. And it's billed as a role-playing game for everyone. ICRPG is easy to learn and easy to play for all ages. The rules are simple and intuitive, and it's all in one compact book. Everything you need, everything you need for to play it. ICRPG Master Edition is a comprehensive book with rules, characters, monsters, maps, and items. All it needs is you. What people really liked from this system or book is the index card dungeon and adventure generators, which sounds right up my alley. I definitely need to check this out. Monster Heart point system, which sounds really cool too. Anthony told me a tiny little bit about it. And adding effort to the die roll. That I'm going to need a little explanation on, but everything else about this sounds super cool, and I definitely want to pick this up soon.
Index Card RPG. I'm gonna tell you a little funny story about Index Card. I own every edition of Index Card RPG. I've read every edition of Index Card RPG multiple times. Hanker Furnell, the creator of Index Card RPG, I personally think is a genius game designer. But I've never played Index Card RPG. I've seen multiple actual plays in Index Card RPG, and I think that this game is a masterpiece. I'm not shitting when I say I think this game is a masterpiece. I think it's almost a perfect quick fantasy game. So if anyone in chat is running Index Card RPG and wants to invite me for a one shot or a mini campaign, please do. Or maybe I'll run it one day. But this game, I can't speak enough about Index Card RPG. This is such a great game, and I could see everything in here. Why people will want to convert it to Cypher, because a lot of its bone reminds me of Cypher System, and I'll go to the Monster Heart system. Basically, all the monsters have a heart like Zelda. And one heart is 10 hit points. Two hearts is each heart is, so you don't have like odd number hit points so if you look at a monster sheet and you see it has one heart, it has 10 hit points. Right? And you see if it has two hearts, it has 20 hit points. That number doesn't change. Right? And the reason why they do that is so that it's easy to just either design a monster on the fly or look at a monster and be immediately able to know what it does. All damage is the same. It's 6 points. No matter what weapon you're using, it's 6 points of damage. The effort to the die roll is that there's different die for effort. So when you're using effort, whether it's damaging something or picking a lock, right, you're applying effort. It's an effort roll. You add that in addition to your, like, say if you hitting a creature with a sword, right? It does 6 points of damage. Your effort die does 4 points, is a 4 die. So you roll a 6 and a 4. So if you hit, you add those two numbers and that's how much damage you do.
I like that. I like that idea, actually. That's super cool.
It's a very simple, sweet game. And I voted for this on this was one of my 2 votes. Right? I voted for this because of the index card dungeon and adventure generator. It's basically in the back of the book, he gives you a bunch of images that you cut into index cards, right? And you just flip them on the table. You need an obstacle, you just go to the obstacle to flip it on the table, and whatever image that is, that's what happens into the scene. It's genius.
Nice.
Yeah, I definitely need to pick this up as I've recently started getting into actual solo playing RPG, finally. And this seems perfect for that. Having a generator for like adventure or obstacles, whatever have you. Any sort of generator is always appreciated.
Well, I think, and
Chat saying you could just buy the card set. You could buy them on drive-thru. You don't even need the game. Like if you want to use it for Cypher, you could purchase the index cards.
what's really cool,
Yeah.
what's really cool too is that's probably a saving grace with Cypher, and probably why a lot of these games made the list is anything with charts and lists work well for Cypher System. So
Yeah, you love to see generated lists. It's just it's so easy to use those things for on the fly anything, and that's always appreciated in Cyber System, whether it be an obstacle or a cipher or just a random trinket they're finding. All that stuff is just so useful to have.
right. So yeah, that's great stuff. Next in line is Stars Without Number. Sine Nomine Publishing. They got 10 votes. Pretty nice. The year is 3200 and mankind's empire lies in ashes. The jump gates fell 600 years ago, severing the links between a myriad of worlds of the human diaspora. Now the long isolation of silence falls away as men and women return to the skies above their scattered worlds. Will you be among them once more? Stars Without Number Revised is an old school inspired game of sci-fi adventure, one built on the ground up to encourage a sandbox play and simplify a GM's job in providing it. Familiar mechanics are employed to forge new worlds and explore new possibility. Guidelines built on long experience used to help a group venture in wholly new directions. So the major things that came away, the major 3 points we got for this one was character creation rules, world building rules, and planet generator rules. And once again, like we said, charts, generators, those things, are going to keep popping up when it comes to Cypher, because Cypher is so open ended and allows such creativity on the behalf of the players and the JM. Anything like this is going to add gravitas to the world, as well as for the players, because you're going to feel empowered to be a part of that process of creating this. So I really dig it. Stars Without Number is an excellent game. It's so much fun. I dig all the things that people brought up about it. Just very smartly done.
All right, I'm gonna pull an owl on this one. I've never read or physically. I've always been aware of Stars Without Number. I don't own it. I've never read it, played it, so I don't know why any of this stuff is. I've always heard great things, but this is the one game on the list that I have not read or own a copy of. And the funny story is, I was trying to get a copy on like Amazon, and for some reason, those things are like hella expensive. They want like $100-something for Stars Without Number.
Be better off just getting the PDF.
Yeah.
And again, just like Anthony, this is another one I haven't, read or played, but I have heard a ton about. Specifically, the world and planet generator or whatever have you, and not only this one, but also Worlds Without Number. I don't know if that's like a fantasy one or like a modern day one, but yeah, the generators I've heard very good things about.
A quick disclaimer: it had 10 votes, but it was between worlds. It was both those games, and everyone that voted for it usually mentioned both of them at the same time. And for someone that's totally naive, what do they mean? Like, a lot of people said the character creation in this game is awesome. Is it like Traveler, where you can die in character creation? Maybe somebody in the chat knows.
You don't die in character creation, but there's just a lot of character building, personality, history, so on and so forth. Great Crazy Star says that Stars Without Number is ideal for solo play.
Okay.
And I would agree with that.
Anything with a bunch of charts that lets you roll stuff out randomly is going to be perfect for solo play.
Yes.
Oh yeah, and yeah, thanks, chat. Bright Crazy Star said it's not as intense as Traveler, but it is a role and reveal character creation.
Yeah.
What I thought, because anytime I see people say, "Hey, oh, character creation is awesome," because no one ever gets the same, that usually makes me think of Traveler when you roll everything out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that's literally what it does. And like I said, I've enjoyed fooling around with it. It puts you in mind of Star Frontiers, old Star Frontiers. How Star Frontiers was chart generated. Everything was kind of and so your characters, even though you both guys were playing warrior types, they were crazy different. Same kind of principality going on there.
And I heard the planet generator is freaking awesome too, because you could build whole like universes on the fly, like whole star systems on the fly, which is pretty awesome.
I mean, you couple that. I mean, anybody who's running Stars of Fire for Cypher System, this right here would be a absolute dream come true, because just thinking along the lines of hard sci-fi. Okay, so we can't get back to Earth. Planet's dark, but now you found another planet. Just outside. It was in perfect alignment. It's all this kind of stuff that it'll do. It's perfect alignment in orbit where it was hidden for all these years, and so on and so forth. Just cool stuff that it happens.
So before I go into number 6 on this list, just want to say 2 things. Anybody in chat or watching this on YouTube, can you please explain to me why this thing is hella expensive on Amazon? I'm still racking my brain trying to figure this out.
Mike is our resident book collector, so he might be able to shed some light on that for us. He just popped in. I don't know if he's actually chatting, but yeah, he might be able to answer that for us. But yeah, Anthony, you want to dive in on number 6?
All right, number 6. Can't help, close your ears. Number 6 on our list is Rifts by Pallaidium Games with 12 votes.
Why did Cat have to plug his ears?
Because if you ever watch his show or stream, you'll know. If you ever watched his review of Rifts, you'll know.
Oh, okay. Now I gotta go find it.
Rifts is a multi-genre role-playing game that captures the imagination unlike any other. Elements of magic, horror, supernatural coexist with science, high technology, and the ordinary. The game spans countless dimensions, making anything and everything possible. Players are truly limited only by their imaginations. Rifts is a game that I personally probably played the most of out of any role-playing game. Like, I went a good 2 or 3 year span where I was just playing Pallaidium games, right? So it holds a fondness in my heart for the settings and just for the company in general. But I'll be the first to tell you that the rule set is a hot mess. But it was a hot mess you loved at the time. But the setting is freaking phenomenal. And I think this is what most people ask for. Converting the setting of Rifts into Cypher System.
Easy.
The SDC and NDC damage rules, which the mega damage rules are awesome. And the powers and abilities list. And that fit for all of the Pallaidium games. You can say what you want about Pallaidium games, but when it came to superhero powers, they did it right.
Hands down.
Hands down.
Listen.
It's so easy to convert powers into abilities, into artifacts, into whatever you want. And you can just pick up Heroes Unlimited and go to town. You have a freaking 1,000 ciphers right in front of you. You know what I mean?
1,000 ciphers. You have fodder to make any freaking foci you want.
Yeah.
Rifts is one of those games. Rifts was the I guess you could say it was the successful way Torg should have been done. Even though I bring Torg up, love that game, but yeah, Rifts was that for shizzle.
Rifts was the first. I could be wrong, and I might be wrong, but in my eyes, it was the first catch-all setting. It was the first setting that literally threw everything into a pot. Like you want kung fu, you want aliens, you want dragons, you want spies, everything. You want mechs, you want
You want it, it was there, it was in there. Yeah.
They literally threw everything into one like jumbled mess of goodness. And I'll explain the SDC and NDC rules because this is still a mechanic that I think still makes a lot of sense. But SDC was structural damage capacity, and NDC was mega damage capacity. And what they did was they separated the way damage works. Like they didn't think a rock should be able to damage a tank. So there was different damage levels, right? Like people, buildings and stuff like that had SDC damage. And big structures like spaceships, planets, they had MDC damage. So if you had a weapon that did SDC damage, it couldn't affect something that had MDC like hit points. So it made a lot of sense. Like and that's something like if someone had a bow and a slingshot, they shouldn't be able to damage a tank, even though a slingshot does 2 points of damage. It shouldn't be able to damage a tank, and that's how that was their workaround.
Yeah. I like that concept a lot. Yeah. This is actually the first time I'm hearing of this, SDC, MDC. I like that a lot, actually. That is really good, especially in Cypher System if you're trying to push like a certain settings theme like very hard. Like let's say, what is it? What did you do? Like cowboys versus aliens, right? Like a cowboy's pistol would be SDC and a ship would be MDC, so they couldn't shoot their the ship down with a gun. Like that makes so much sense. That's so good.
It's funny we were talking about that. And it's funny, I'm going to mention Star Wars. It was Star Wars, the D20 version, that came out back during 3rd edition, did the same thing, and it made more sense because a lot of people, the word hit points, everybody was thinking damage. They used vitality and hits. Vitality was just what you're saying. Vitality was how much energy you were expending, and, it was you being worn down. And then actual damage was hits. So you had to go.
The NDC argument was you can't attack a tank with a baseball bat. Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, that's excellent.
And I'm kind of upset with myself that I never actually thought about converting that into Cypher because you guys know I talk about Pallaidium games.
A lot.
It was a huge part of my childhood,
But have you been in a situation where that was like even came up yet? Have you run like
Cowboys versus Aliens?
Oh, right, you did run that. Okay.
They said it had a large number. It was like 1 MDC equals 1,000 SDC.
Right.
But 1 SDC could not inflict 1 MDC damage.
Yeah, it makes sense. 100% makes sense. It's awesome. I dig that concept a ton. It's all. I will see myself probably using it if I find myself in a setting that it makes sense.
Right.
And I will say this too. I was surprised that maybe not that it made this list, but I was surprised that it got so many votes and it was so high on this list.
Honestly, me too. I do see people talking about it somewhat, but for it to be number 5 is surprising.
Yeah. Who wants to do number 5?
Oh, excuse me, number 6 was surprising. We're on to number 5. See, I'm already jumping ahead. So number 5, we had Cyberpunk Red. And that is from, sorry, I gotta pull up the notes. I'm gonna butcher Talsorian Games. I'm horrible at pronouncing these things. But either way, the little rundown is, welcome to the time of the Red, Chumba. The mega corporation spent decades wrecking everything, and in the aftermath of their last war, Everyone has to fend for themselves, but that's just fine. You can handle it. After all, in a world of vicious booster gangs, rampaging cyborgs, corporate assassins, and nihilistic doomsday cults, there's only one rule. Always take it to the edge. Take the big risks, get the big rewards, be the action, start the rebellion, light the fire. Never drive slow when you can blaze a trail. You've hooked your Militech pistol to the interface in your brain, upgraded your cybernetic fist with carbo glass blades, and installed cyber eyes that can pierce through the red haze like morning fog. There's a world full of opportunities out there just waiting for the right edge runner. Maybe that's you. Cyberpunk Red is the latest edition of the classic tabletop role-playing game of the dark future and encompasses everything you need to explore the post-war world of the time of the Red. And the main things people really liked from this game are the net running mechanics, obviously converting the setter to Cypher System, a weapon soak mechanics, and weapon and equipment list, which again in a cyberpunk setting you want to see that great weapons and equipment list, and it's awesome for Cypher System. But I'm gonna have to let you guys talk a little bit more about the other things because this is another one I have not read.
Wow, how many votes did you get? I don't know if you said it.
Oh, I did not. This one got 13 votes.
Okay.
So, Mike Pondsmith, what can we say about this guy? He basically started the cyberpunk wave back in the the late 80s, you know, as far as this company's concerned with this RPG and everything. And everything that Al just pointed out, the setting, of course, is always going to be a big draw. Basically think of cyberpunk like Shadowrun. Only thing is there's no magic. This is all technology. It's all dystopian and dark, a dark future. The weapon soak mechanics, that's awesome. Basically, being able to soak damage and so on and so forth is pretty cool. A pretty cool idea.
You sure that
Weapon, huh?
You sure that that's how the weapon soak mechanic works? Because I don't think it was.
Well, I can look. Let me look at it real quick again. But
I mean, I couldn't tell you how it works, but it all this stuff.
Anthony,
Oh, good.
no, I was saying, Anthony, go ahead and talk while I look this up.
Cyberpunk is the classic Blade Runner, you know, like setting. But the one thing I'm gonna say about this, right? Why I'm surprised this isn't higher on the list, and I'm so happy that Moral House is here because this is the genre that most people are clamoring for in Cypher System, just in general, just having your ear to the streets, to the community, just hearing. And if you guys don't know, Andrew Marlowe from Marlowe House is actually working on a cyberpunk setting. You know, I don't know if Al, you can put up the links to that. But yeah, what you call it, go check his stuff out. It's phenomenal. Or you could go to our YouTube channel. He's running some one shot on a work that he's working on right now. So yeah, you could definitely go check it out, Blood and Chrome. But this, I thought this was going to be one or two on this list because this is the one genre that I don't think we go a week without a conversation breaking out on a Discord server with people wanting cyberpunk and Cypher System. First of all, cyberpunk just sounds perfect. It rolls off the tongue. So I don't see why not. So I was shocked that this, I was shocked that this made, this wasn't higher on the list, right? And there is nothing like net running. I'm not as familiar with the new Red mechanics, but it's basically, be able to go into a computer interface and, change stuff and control stuff from within, through a series of checks and rolls. That could easily be done in Cypher System, with our current skill system. It's just redeveloping the skill list so that, you have the cyberpunk like lingo, you know what I mean, to be able to do it. So I think it's easily done. And I know Andrew could speak more on this, because he's actually working on it. But yeah, the only thing I really got to say is I'm shocked this wasn't higher.
Yeah, In some respects, yes. Some respects, no. I mean, I agree. Yeah, it's basically soaking damage, Anthony. Um, different weapons have different weapon soak. So it's like if your shield doesn't have a high enough weapon soaking or whatever, based on the weapon, then of course your damage is going to get through, so on and so forth.
What's that mean? So, like, how's that a?
So for example, let's just say if we were going to apply it to Cypher, you could give, say, the person a heavy weapon and say that heavy weapon's weapon soak is 2. If the armor isn't that rated that high, then all the damage is getting through. It's not blocking anything. It's kind of like it's like armor piercing, like armor penetration.
Oh, that's easily converted into Cypher, actually.
Exactly. Yeah. Very
Like,
easy.
you can make like all artifact weapons ignore damage, and it's almost similar to the same.
Yep.
And then just start, if you're doing a futuristic setting, start making blaster pistols as artifacts, and like that's a quick.
Yep. Just a quick ad, real quick.
All right, so number 4, is it me or is it Dean?
Al just did that one, so that would be me. This would be me. Number 4 is Fate. Evil Hat Games, 18 votes. Grab your plasma rifles, spell components, jetpacks, name your game. Fate Core is the foundation that can make it happen. Fate Core is a flexible system that can support whatever worlds you dream up. Have you always wanted to play a post-apocalyptic spaghetti western with tentacled monsters? Sword and sorcery in space. Wish there was a game based on your favorite series of books, films, or television, but it never happened? Fate Core is your answer. Fate Core is a tabletop role-playing game about proactive, capable people who lead dramatic lives. Create your characters and develop instant group dynamics with our unique phased character gen system. Use those characters as a springboard for storytelling in our GM world building chapters. And the things that people were taking from this to bring to our Cypher that they pointed out were aspects and compel mechanics. Anything can have a character sheet concept, and narrative control can pass to players concept. So those things are all easily applied to Cypher because it's kind of almost already there. Narrative control can pass to players. Well, player intrusions, kind of along the same line. Anything can have a character sheet concept. Once again, flavors. That brings that there. The aspects and compel mechanics, which I do know but can't think of right now. I'm going to let Anthony talk about it to jog my memory.
All right, Fate, I think, shares the most bones with Cypher System, even though they're kind of completely different games. And Fate uses his own set of dice, But I think the overarching philosophy of Fate, the way narrative is shared, the way a story is told, the way characters are created, they have very similar philosophies on the type of adventures they want to run. Like Fate and Cypher are both, I consider both cinematic RPGs, where it's more about the setting and the scene as opposed to the mechanics that hold the narrative together. It's all about, it's like telling a movie as opposed to telling a novel. And I think both Fate and Cypher System do both those things extremely well, right?
I think the difference between Fate and Cypher, the biggest difference is that Fate is just a little bit looser. No, they're a lot bit looser with the rules, with the amount of rules that govern the game.
Agree with the core system, but if you buy one of the specific genre of games that are written using the core Fate system, it's entirely different. Like if you ever play Dresden Files, the Fate Files, it's more in line with Cypher System.
No, that's what I'm saying. The core, but we're talking about the core. Yeah. And and I'm trying to remember with the aspects and the compel mechanics. To me, those were, those are supposed to be the things that drive your character. Kind of like how Cypher does it with a descriptor. These are more mechanically inclined because you basically you pass or fail by leaning into your aspects and compels.
And I think what they mean about everything on your character sheet is very similar to Fate, how Cypher System handles skills. you could say something and then build a character off your sentence, off what you're saying. The same way in Cypher System, you could take a skill like that's not in any game. Like I got this in front of me, crayon making. So now you can use crayon making, to anything to do with wax, anything, that applies to your game. It's the same way with building a character in Fate.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like I said, the character creation, everything about Fate in that same, like you're saying with Cypher, it's all about literally what you're envisioning. It's easier to create Batman in Fate than it is to probably create Batman in any other system, if you kind of get what I mean, because he's multifaceted, and Fate does it well.
I'm saying how the Book of Hans influenced their GM style more than anything, and they all mentioned in their favorite, Fate games. Fate. If you're a Cypher fan, most likely you've played Fate, or you're a fan of Fate, and vice versa. I think I think our communities kind of roll in the same circles.
Well, I played Fate before Cypher. I fell in love with Fate. I fell in love with the dice mechanics for Fate. I thought that was brilliant. Just pluses and minuses, and the static idea of a roll really worked for me. So yeah, it definitely holds a lot,
Like Crazy Storm mentioned something a lot of people out here say that Fate seems like a cooperative story generation place, but it doesn't feel like a game. It feels like a way to organize working on a story with others. I've heard that a lot. Like I've heard that from a lot of people. That and what's the other one? Fiasco.
Fiasco.
Like Fiasco and Fate were like the first narrative games I ever played. And I hear that a lot about both those systems. Well, so you're definitely not wrong, because a lot of people have that opinion.
I can agree with that. I mean, I enjoy Fiasco, for other reasons, but yeah, Fiasco definitely shares that in common with Fate.
I think Fate's a little more mechanic-y, if that's a word, or if not, I just made it into a word. That it's more mechanic-y than Fiasco is, though. Fiasco is basically group storytelling. It's like For the Queen, if anybody's ever played that. It's just group storytelling.
It's 4 rules. It's like 4 rules.
But yeah, I'm not shocked Fate is this high on this list. So you guys ready for the top 3, the big boys? All right, can I get a drum roll for the top 3? With 24 votes and absolutely no surprise that it's on this list, it's Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition.
And don't read that blurb.
Go ahead. Today. Moving to the top 3 list.
No, go ahead.
Wait, what's going on?
You showed the second and first.
I know, but we're back. We're back on it. So go ahead and talk about 5e.
All right, 5. I wrote up what 5th edition is, but if you don't know by now what 5th edition is, you can't say that you play RPGs. It's it's the freaking elephant in the room. It's the gorilla in the china shop. It's every scenario you could possibly imagine. So this is what it had 18 votes, of course, and this is what people were saying they want to convert it to Cypher System. I'm not sure if I agree with any of these, for maybe the exceptional one, but here goes nonetheless. Converting the many settings into Cypher System, I can understand that. The advantage and disadvantage mechanic. Using the schools of magic in Cypher. Converting the mega adventures to Cypher. And magic items, monsters, and spell lists. All right, guys, what do you take on 5e?
Yeah, so these things that people mentioned are definitely valid, right? So converting the settings, obviously that's a great one. There's great settings to be had in 5e. There's so many great setting books.
Well, we've had some people convert. We had Dark Sun, Spelljammer, I saw somebody post a Planescape game once. There's a ton of Wizards of the Coast owns a ton of great IPs.
And on top of that, another thing that people really talk about a lot with Cypher System is the magic and using the schools of magic in Cypher. Kind of makes sense if you really care about the disciplines and whatever have you. That is an awesome thing to lift from Cypher if you really feel the need to have all that detail. But the real kicker, what the best part of using 5e in Cypher System would definitely be the magic items, monsters, and spell list. By far, that's easily like what you should be pulling from 5e if you're pulling anything. Aside from the settings, because people are always clamoring for monsters. The Cypher Bestiary is on the way. We don't really have one right now, so monsters are always a good one. Magic items, people always want artifacts and ciphers. It's very easy to convert a magic item into artifact or a cipher. And then spell lists, very easy to convert into an ability. Just mix up, you convert the damage or whatever into cipher numbers, and bing, bang, boom, you're good to go. And that's probably the best things you could pull from 5e, quite honestly.
I'm gonna tell a funny story. It might have been like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I don't know if Dean, you saw this, but someone thought I insulted them on the Discord because they had asked. They was just talking about running fantasy in Cypher, right? And they were saying, "Oh, there's not enough spells. There's not enough magic items." So my response was, and it might have been a dickhead response, and if so, I apologize. You guys can tell me in chat, right? But I was like, "Yo, do you own Dungeons and Dragons Player's Handbook or Pathfinder 1 or 2 book that has wizard spells and magic items in it?" And they were like, "Yeah." I was like, "So then that's all the spells you need. You need some fantasy ciphers. Pick any spell from any school of magic, give it a cipher level, and there you go. You're done." And honestly, I wasn't trying to be rude, but I was just like, it's that easy. So I can understand. And now this person is going to sit back and go, "Hey, I was the one that had the conversation." But I got the impression that they got offended by my response. And I was not trying to offend, but I just think that, that's why I always think it's funny when, especially when it comes to fantasy, there's so many games out there. There's so many fantasy games that you could grab, and it's so easy to convert into Cypher System that when you clamoring and screaming that there's not enough of this, if you're like me, and I'm pretty sure that you own at least a third of the Wizards of the Coast books, just open one of them up. Like last week in our Keep on the Borderlands game, I think Mike, I said, "Oh, you found a cipher." And he said, "What was it?" And I was like, "Oh shit, I don't know." The Mork Borg book was right next to me. I opened the book. I saw this spell that said you could talk to the dead. I said, "It's a talk to the dead cipher. Roll a d6." He rolled a d6. I got a 3. Oh, so you can ask any dead creature within the next 3 hours after it died 3 questions. Close the book. There you go. There's your cipher.
And here's the thing, Jack Spade said just converting a spell list into abilities for Cyber sounds like a crap ton of work to the point of it being a pain in the ass. Actually, Jack, if you know anything about Cypher, it's not, because you see what Anthony just did. Literally, that's not what it said in the Mork Borg book, how to talk to the dead spell worked or anything else. No. You literally just set the parameters.
No, so what I think Jack was saying is just that if you were to go and do that for everything in D&D like at once, that would be a crap ton of work, yes, because there's just so much of it. But if you're just needing something on the fly like Anthony did, like, "Oh shit, they found a cipher. I didn't have anything prepared." You just whip out your 5e book, flip to a fucking any ability, and bing bang boom, you have a cipher. Like
you got a cipher, but I'm saying even in the same respect, like what you're saying now, same principle. Think about it. In Cypher, creating a wizard is like really freaking cool because you can like actually pick up any damn spell. It doesn't make a difference. It's just gonna make a difference.
He's saying when you want to make them to reliable and repeated lasting abilities. Yeah, it's gonna take some work, but it's way less work than the reverse. It's way easier to convert a spell from 5e to Cypher than it is converting any other thing from another game into 5e.
And see, like, give you an example of what we're saying. If you're looking at, say, a 5e character, a 5e wizard, you can give the 5e wizard a focus like Master Spells. If you look at Master Spells is nothing but a bunch of meta magic to go on top of your magic. So as far as spells are concerned, you can let them build it like this. For 3 XP, you pick up a new spell. Every XP is 3, you know what I mean? And then you can tell them, roll a D6, D6 plus 1 or D6 whatever. And that's the level of the spell. And this is how it costs. This is what it costs to cast it. So they might be, they might literally get a 6th level spell, but they can't cast it or it costs too much.
I mean, this is not what the video's about, but if you want to do a spell that becomes a permanent spell, it's an ability, right?
Right.
So all you have to do is find the tier that it fits in, and the Cypher System core rulebook helps you judge power level by tier in the revised edition. So if you think a spell is like super powerful, make it 4th or 5th tier.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's go back to 5e. But I'm not surprised this is so high on the list. The advantage and disadvantage system, even though I still think that's the best mechanic 5e ever came up with, does Cypher System need that?
No. No, not at all. I mean, it would be nice, right? Like to give a player like, hey, you don't have any XP, but you did something cool. Let me on the fly, like, hey, you have advantage on this roll, right? That's kind of cool. But on the flip side with Cypher, you just reward an XP and then they can just roll a dice at any point they choose.
You can reward an asset. You can, whatever.
There's so many other ways to do it.
I'm with Anthony. I don't think it's necessary.
But it is a hell of a cool mechanic, though. You can't front on the mechanic.
Oh no, it's nice.
The mechanic is great if it fits the system. For Cypher, it just doesn't fit because Cypher has its own built-in methodology.
Using the different schools of magic in Cypher, I could definitely see that. Like,
I would only use that if my setting called for it.
Yeah. So I could definitely see that. Converting the mega adventures to Cypher, might be a shitload of work because some of those adventures are big as all hell. But
I mean,
so if you wanted to, hey, look, I'm somebody that's actually currently playing Keep on the Borderlands on the server. So who am I to judge?
Exactly.
Facts.
Magic items, masters, and spellers. We talked about that, but I'm not shocked. And I wasn't shocked. Somebody wrote disadvantage as his intrusion could be cool. I never thought of that. That's actually a good idea.
That Marlo, yeah, that's a good one. That's actually great. I'm gonna remember that. That's a good one.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying though. How would you implement that? Would you like tack on just a free intrusion at any given time for you as a GM?
Hey, look, I'm trying. I'll give us a quick off the top scenario. We're trying to get into this nightclub, right? I'm trying to sweet talk the guy. I'm sliding him a $50 bill, right? The GM goes, I have a GM intrusion for you. Yes, I'll take it. The $50 bill you gave him is counterfeit. So when you roll for your roll 2d20, take the lowest of the roll.
You see if you know that this is okay. That works.
That's actually pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, it's good. That's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Are we ready to move on to number 2?
Yeah, number 2. Before you, I just want to say this was number 1 to about 30 minutes right before I started doing the list.
And I kind of spoiled it already because I went to the tab a little early. But number 2 here, Blades in the Dark. Let me paste the link so people can check it out if they want to. But yeah, I'll read the little blurb about Blades in the Dark. Blades in the Dark is a tabletop role-playing game by John Harper about a crew of daring scoundrels. What happened?
Votes.
Oh, I always forget to say the number of votes. So 27 votes, which is tremendously huge,
Yeah.
and that's a lot higher than our last one.
Yeah.
But either way, let me go back to the blurb. I lost my place now. Your scoundrels play Harper about a crew of daring scoundrels seeking their fortunes on the haunted streets of an industrial fantasy city. There are heists, chase, occult mysteries, dangerous bargains, bloody skirmishes, and above all, riches to be had if you're bold enough to seize them. You and your fledgling crew must thrive amidst the threat of rival gangs, powerful noble families, vengeful ghosts, the blue coats of the City Watch, and the siren song of your scoundrels' own vices. Will you rise to power in the criminal underworld? What are you willing to do to get to the top? And the main things people want to bring in from Blades in Dark were clocks, and more clocks mechanics. I assume that was mentioned a ton. And the tone and feel of running a high style game. And
Yeah.
I will say that this game is another one I have not played yet or read, but I do want to for the clocks. Everything everybody says about the clocks has been fantastic, and I do want to read that for myself. But Anthony, I'll let you go ahead and say more about it.
Out of the 27 votes, 27 people mentioned clocks. That's why I put it in there like that.
One of the biggest things I can say about Blaze in the Dark from playing it, the planning stages of the game are like they're just like really cool aspects. It's something that I can see Cypher doing really, really well because it turns planning the heist, into an actual aspect of the game. And you actually do things, you're going out, you're gathering supplies and information and tools and so on and so forth in order to get these jobs done, which lends itself to Cypher in wonderful, wonderful ways. Like you're saying with the clocks and more clocks mechanic, that is just freaking cool. And it just goes right hand in hand with it. So yeah, Blaze in the Dark is definitely.
How would you incorporate clocks into Cypher System? Maybe chat could help us because I know I've heard actually people that were writing in there. Everyone had like a different concept. So I want to know like what's the best concept to incorporate, John Harper's like clock mechanic into a Cypher System game. Either one of your
I could tell you one right now that it's the whole heist like thing, right? So in Cypher, again, this is coming from someone who has not read the book and knows nothing about the official clock mechanic. But the way I could see it kind of happening in Cypher is you're doing a heist, right? Whatever, you're in a building, and it's timed, obviously, right? But you can't really keep track of time in real time because it's a role playing game, right? So you say, hey, during this part of the game, during this like heist scene or whatever, each action you take towards completing the heist ticks the clock one. And after 8 ticks, that's it. The security guards come or whatever is going to happen. The scene wraps up. So you got to make those 8 actions that you're choosing amongst yourselves really count because the clock is ticking down. And again, I have not read Blades in the Dark, so I don't know if that's how it works in that game at all. But that's how I can potentially see doing something like that in Cypher System.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. Just like Kid Hub, he says he used them his and he used it more of as a doom clock. So I can see that kind of being in a reverse thing. Like what Al was saying, it's ticking down, this is going to happen. Or you can have, if you don't succeed on, let's just say 5 out of the 8 tasks, then it's that's when, the dam breaks and everybody dies or something. There's so many different ways to implement that into a Cypher game.
Yeah, the Doom Clock is really cool. Lord and Lady Mills. Well, I printed a bunch of pie slices of various sizes for the clocks. Stopped the print at halfway point and swapped colors so I could do them face up. Blue for success, red for failure.
See? Yeah, exactly.
White Crazy Star wrote, clocks are the different approach to the philosophy of timing. Oh, Index Card RPG. That's actually a great point, a great reference.
I still need to read that one. Sorry, it's on my list. That's one of the next RPGs I'm buying, though. You heard it here.
You know what it kind of reminds me of that you might know, Al, that I could Mark Borg's End of the World. You know, in the beginning of the game, you roll to see how much time you have left before the world ends. it's like doing that, but actually ticking it off.
Okay. Yeah. I get you. Yeah, that makes sense.
I know you read more board because you don't have.
I definitely have read that one. Yes.
All right, so we moving on.
Yeah, Blades in the Dark, phenomenal game. If you haven't played it, I wasn't surprised it got this many votes, and I even told Al that this won prior to me calculating the votes. But I was like, "Oh, Blades in the Dark is running away with it," and then in the last hour, this game surpassed it out of nowhere. Like literally came from third to first. So who wants to read the third one?
I got it. Okay, so and this is funny too because I actually voted for this one. I'm surprised it is number one, but not surprised it's on the list. Invisible Sun by Monty Cook Games with 28 votes. As Anthony said, in the 11th hour, it just took it, and or should we say the 11 and a half hour it took it. So, for those who don't know it, Invisible Sun is a role-playing game of surreal fantasy. The player characters are Visley, wielders of magical power, recently returned to their true home, the actuality. A world that seems like a surreal dream to those of us toiling aimlessly in the boring gray realm. You and I falsely believe it is real. These characters face incredible challenges, visit breathtaking places, and discover secrets so astonishing that the only ones who can cope with them are those who understand the truth that powers the universe of magic. There's a ton that you can say about it. I mean, it's made by Monty Cook Games. It's made by Monty himself.
Just to answer chat, a couple of people in chat asked, "Is it this Cypher System?" It is not. It has its own complete.
It has its own system. It is akin to the Cypher System, and that's why it works so well together. You do write a sentence to create a character in this game. There are things assigned, but this game only uses D10s. You have pools. It has a unique magic system. The magic system, the way the spells are set up, the way magic is cast by the various types, because I guess you could say this would be like the World of Darkness Mage, the Ascension, but on crack. Because it's like, conceptually, we talk about, like, for example, they have a Vancian spellcaster. They call them Vances. Vancian spellcaster, the way they set up their magic is that all their magic is written on sheets of paper or cards, and you have a space on your character sheet that these all have to fit in, and these are your spells for the day. It's really cool the way, and something like that put into a Cypher aspect is awesome. The Sooth deck, magic spells and using D10s instead of D20s, these are all things people pointed out. The Sooth deck is brilliant because the Sooth deck is this brown deck of cards, which I just happen to have sitting over here because I do use them for my Cypher games. And it's really cool because the card will have a statement on the top and then might have something written there at the bottom. Like, for example, this card I'm looking at is the Monarch, and it says Sovereign. So you could basically use these cards and bring in these aspects of what the Monarch and Sovereign are, because they do have explanations for what happens, on these decks. And you can bring those things into play, which is really, really cool.
Did you read the stuff that people wanted in there?
Snooze deck, magic spells, and using D10s instead of D20s.
I can see the first two. I'm not sure about using the D10 and D20 because if you're doing that, then why not just play Invisible Sun?
Right. Well, I agree with you there too. I mean, and other thing is, it changes the entire curve. Using your effort and edge and stuff would really make it weird using 2D10 versus, or however many D10s, because sometimes it's 3D10. It just depends on what's going on. It's a very different approach to.
There's situations where you roll multiple D10s, right?
Yeah, there are.
I do want to say this as my one country, because I have not read Invisible Sun, and I actually don't have it. I didn't really have the money when it first dropped, and but either way, what I want to say is, and this is just kind of a funny aside, how the fuck are you guys gonna vote for a Monty Cook Games thing that influences your other Monty Cook games? Like, I'm just joking around. Like, it was just funny to see our number one and like all RPGs was another Monty Cook Games thing. Like, come on, guys! Like, you couldn't.
It made a lot of sense though when you think about it, right?
It does. I'm just joking around.
If you're an MCG fan, you usually absorb. Yes, I'm gonna check. Number one, we win. Goodbye. I tell you that, like, the way I was doing the votes, right? Like, whether you send me a private DM, you put it on Facebook, you put it on Twitter, you put it on Reddit, I was marking little check marks. So when I got to work, I would go by and go, okay, that's one vote for whatever game system they picked, right? And then I would write a little note saying, oh, they mentioned Suits deck, right? So so when I wrote up the notes, I knew, what to write. So Blades in the Dark was number one, 5e was number two. And then I got to like the last hour, and then I was getting like Invisible Sun might have been like 4 on the list. And so in my mind, I'm thinking Charles or Monty or Sean was like, yo, we only got 4 hours left. Everybody vote for Invisible Sun.
It's a conspiracy.
Like the last 6 votes I did were all Invisible Sun.
But again, like you said though, being a Monty Cook fan, being a fan of what they do, this kind of only makes sense because, again, what we were talking about earlier, people talk about magic and Cypher System and wanting to be able to do spells and so on and so forth. The setting itself, run as a Cypher game, is freaking cool as shit. Because the setting is awesome. I really dig the setting. Honestly, for me, it's given me a new love for Harry Potter, TV show The Magicians, all of that. I'll watch that stuff just so I can implement ideas from that into my Invisible Sun games, which again could be implemented into a Cypher game.
Yo, people in chat saying Numenera was probably coming in at number 1.
Yeah, I'm just dying. They're like, Numenera, no thank you, evil.
No thank you, but they're number 2.
Ooh. But yeah, all joking aside, it's definitely it makes sense. I knew it was gonna be on the list. I didn't think it was gonna be number 1. Like, I wasn't keeping track as Anthony was keeping track of it, so it being number 1 threw me off.
Well, Bright Crazy Star just asked, how's the PDF $99? Well, Bright Crazy Star, the fact that you get everything that's in that cube, which is a 40-pound cube, okay? The 40-pound cube has 3 books, a ton of supplements, cards. I'll just give you an example. I have boxes over here that have all the spells because you have spell cards. Yeah. So it's like crazy. It's just a massive amount of material that you get.
You probably get thousands of pages worth of material for that $99. It's the cube itself is with Invisible Sun is the most beautiful game I've ever seen in my life. Like, for RPG, that when it comes to sheer beauty, like opening it is like finding the Holy Grail and Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like, you feel like your face is gonna melt. You know what I mean?
Put it this way: this box, this is only one of, I think, 3 boxes that I have. And these are the cards, these are the spells, and there's different ones for the entire game. And I think I have 3 of these boxes, and it's like crazy. That's just, so the physical item, the physical box was what, $300, $250, something like that?
300.
Yeah, 300. And so that's why it's $99 for a PDF, because you have everything in PDF.
Invisible Sun into Cypher System, I would be curious, and that would sell a hell of a lot, because I'm not sure we're going to see a reprint of Invisible Sun anytime soon. So that is an interesting question about whether they'll make a Cypher version. But if they made a Cypher version, they're essentially all adepts. So because everyone uses magic, right? So it's
Well, but again, no, because even like that, like I like
you
playing.
get ahead.
Well, no, like playing Invisible Sun. I played a maker who was a martial artist. You know what I'm saying? He was a martial artist, and
For magic, isn't it?
huh? What'd you say?
For magic, all the abilities.
Makers make artifacts and items, but he was like a John Woo martial artist, you know, the gun fu type deal. So he made guns. You know, it's really, you know, so you could probably get around it probably where you'd have to pick a flavor. And if you remember in Invisible Sun, another thing that makes it different is that there's already two descriptors.
Yeah.
You know, you know, the sentence is much more intense, if you will. So it would be probably a variation on how the sentence is built.
Yeah, it would be a lot of work to convert Invisible Sun into Cypher. But I think they'll make a boatload. A lot of people that couldn't afford Invisible Sun would jump at trying to get the main book in Cypher. But I think you were buying Invisible Sun not only for the game, but for the experience, the whole thing about opening the box, finding the secrets in the cube. It was more than just a game. It was like an experience.
It was an event.
Yeah.
Yes.
But now that we got a top 10 list, guys, I'm gonna ask you and chat some questions, and let's see if we can answer these questions together, right? So, what surprised you the most from this list?
Honestly, Invisible Sun being number one.
Yes.
I really find that surprising. I mean, wow.
Yeah, to see a Monty Cook Games, and again, I don't know why it was so surprising to see a Monty Cook Games game on the top of the list of games we use for inspiration in Cypher System was kind of funny and unexpected. Again, I did expect to see it on the list of someone because people do love it and it is different from Cypher System, but for it to be number one is just hilarious to me.
I had a couple of surprises. I think Bubble Gumshoe not making this list, Gumshoe Games, because that's another game that a lot of people, when I wasn't asking this question, were talking about using parts of Gumshoe Games in Cypher System. But when I posed the question, I only had like 2 or 3 people vote for that. So I was shocked that it didn't even make the it didn't even make the honorable mention, and I was shocked that Rifts not only made the list, but it was so high on the list. You know, because that's a freaking old game. We're talking like a 1981 game. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Al.
No, because again, you guys know I don't play many games, and I've only heard of Rifts through Anthony talking about it. So like, he's literally like one of the only people I've seen talk about it. And when he brings it up, other people like they chime in, but I never see anybody like bring it up themselves. You know what I mean? So yeah, seeing that on the list was surprising.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm surprised that Rifts is on there, you know, as much as anybody else, or probably feel about the same as Anthony because I played it for years. But
It's so high on the list.
But yeah, to see it at that point, that you know, in the top 5 is like wow.
Yeah, like somebody in chat wrote, like, I'm surprised another edition of D&D didn't make the list. Like, I was expecting 4th edition, 5th edition, 2nd edition. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, I was shocked. So, how many of the top 10 have you read? I mean, have you played?
Oh, one? I have to look at the list again. What about you, Dean?
Let me see.
I played everything except for Index RPG.
I think the only one I've played is 5e. Which is how the hell? How did that happen? Why is that? We need to rectify that immediately.
I've played 6 out of the 10, but I've read 8 out of the 10.
Well, I mean, I've run them. I haven't played myself as a player. Is that you mean as a player, or do you mean?
Just in general.
Yeah, then I've run. Like I said, I run 9.
You won Cyberpunk Red?
Yeah.
And I will say I've also but
See how the system plays. It's Eric's fault because when I first got it, Eric was raving about it, so I got to play it at the game store.
Yeah, so yeah, I've played and run 6 out of the 10. I've read 8 out of the 10.
But I'm really interested in fooling around with the index card game now. Matter of fact, I think I'm going to try to order me a copy of it. I see they got a nice one for $44 as against the Master Edition.
Oh, that's another good point. People saying that they didn't see more Powered by the Apocalypse games on this list. And somebody mentioned Kids on Bikes as well. Kids on Bikes, yeah, I'm surprised.
Well, there's a lot of settings that I think were Kids on Bikes, Tales from the Loop.
Yeah, what's good games? The question was, which kind of like personally, I'm viewing them as good games. But the question is, what were you converting to Cypher System? So
most of the stuff for me is just going to be setting. I want the setting and evocative things. I would have to look at really delve back into the game and start thinking about mechanic wise what I wanted to try to bring over.
So this is the perfect. This leads into the next question I'm gonna ask. Are there any role playing games that didn't make the list that you wish they did?
All right, I'll chime in for this one because it's the one I can, because my 2 votes didn't make it in at all. One is very obvious, Merkborg. Merkborg not on the list. How dare you guys not vote for Merkborg? That shit has tables out the ass, and it's so good for creating things on the fly, even if you don't like the game itself.
And I literally used it about a week ago.
You know what's funny? You want to think it's funny, and I think it's probably why it hasn't hit. Is gamers are also funny.
Jason said he wanted Toon to be on the list.
Toon would have been a good one, but I think what I was saying now is that it's not on the list because I don't think enough people really respect it because of the way it's packaged.
Oh no, for sure.
It comes. Yeah. It looks like pamphlets. It doesn't look like it's a real game.
OSR has a certain stigma attached to it that, like, if you look at it, it looks like some racist guy wrote.
Yeah.
Which is not the case at all.
No.
But I'm making a joke. But like OSR has like this attachment to it, which is unfair, to be honest.
Correct.
But like it has this thing like, it's they're not the most welcoming, but that's not Mark Borg at all. Mark Borg's a phenomenal game and it deserves to be praised.
Right.
Yeah,
because I voted for Rifts and I voted for Star Wars.
And
like I said,
before we move on to the other things, I just want to mention this because it wasn't mentioned at all, and I feel like it deserves to be mentioned. My other vote was Ryutama. For 2 reasons. Someone else voted for Ryutama?
Yeah, somebody else.
But Ryutama, what's really great about Ryutama is you get one thing that's really great for Cypher Systems especially is building the world together. Like you literally go around the table and there's questions that you fill out together like, what's the main export? Or like, what's the main danger? Like, you build it together. That's awesome. And then the other thing is the very, very rules light traveling and like survival, like you need food and water and all that shit. Like they present it in a very simple manner. And if you're trying to play like a game that requires that stuff in Cypher System, Ryutama would be a great go-to to lift from. But yeah, that's a great game, and I'm glad at least someone else voted for it.
And D, I'm
get ready to say, Cortex Prime, I'm surprised didn't make the list because of the number of discussions I've had on our server, on Facebook, on everywhere about Cortex and how similar it is.
There was a ton of games that had 2 votes.
Oh, no, I know. I'm saying that. I'm just surprised. I'm saying I'm surprised because of the number of people that I've talked to about the game and the number of comparisons it gets to things like Savage Worlds, and the fact that a lot of the mechanics, even though it's mechanic heavy, it's much more mechanic heavy than Cypher. It's on par with Savage Worlds and those games like that. But a lot of the mechanics are built to drive the narrative, which is, but hey, it's still a great game.
All right, so the last question I'm gonna ask chat and you guys: what did you take away from this whole experience of doing the top 10? Oh, Deadlands is another good one. Someone in the chat brought up Deadlands. Yeah,
Savage
Deadlands
Worlds.
really got no love on this list.
What?
Savage Worlds, period, got no
Yeah,
love.
that's what I'm saying. I mean, did Savage Worlds not being on the list is a surprise? But what I take away from this whole experience is that, for the most part, there's no game out there that can't be useful on some level there or another. We talk about it all the time as far as playing other games, but even reading the books, learning some of the mechanics, if you open your mind, broaden your sphere and let the cool shit influence you from whatever you're doing, you never know where you can place it. And I think Cypher is the king of, kind of encouraging that.
Yeah, I think. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead, man.
No, I was gonna say that was basically my takeaway, is that people, like, even though, again, we're in a niche of the online like TTRPG community, so we see people talk about a lot of all the different games they play, but seeing it like this broken down is like, yeah, people really do enjoy a variety of different games. It's not like, if you look at the list, like, there are a bunch of different genres and settings and whatever have you on this list. Like, people enjoy a variety of things, and again, it's not all just fantasy. Like, everybody thinks of TTRPGs, they think of fantasy. Oh, D&D fantasy. It's not just that. Like that, and this is a great takeaway. Everybody, like, people enjoy things other than just fantasy.
We got some great stuff from the audience as well.
I like that, D.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do yours, Ant. I'm sorry.
You know what I took the most away from this list is that Cypher GMs want more equipment and weapons started out for every genre. Because if you look at the 12 games we mentioned, 6 out of the 12 people were scavenging the equipment and weapon lists from those game systems to convert to Cypher. So that's telling me that MCG needs to put out some more official equipment and weapon lists.
Yeah. So
that was the one thing I got from this. That because I noticed, like, everyone, whatever it was like, oh yeah, I used it to get ideas for equipment or got ideas for weapons. And I was thinking, it got me thinking, I was like, well, maybe they need to put out a weapons book, like a fantasy weapons book, a sci-fi weapons book, or whatever it is.
Well, if you look at it, and I mean, in a lot of respects, we've talked about that before. If you look at what is it, Vert's equipment list, is massive, and
yeah, and that's a third-party book, but they probably have the best equipment list out of any Cypher book.
Yeah. So
Fire has a lot. Yeah, that's definitely true.
So Jack Spade, he said the outside looking in and stealing parts for Cypher and artifacts can help take DM strain off. I was working on my own deep weapon making system for a sci-fi game, but it wasn't clicking. And then you going, hey, grab this 5e spell and roll with it, made some other ideas click into place. That's awesome. Bright Crazy Star said it really validated to me that there is a lot more to explore what Cypher can integrate for different fields, preferences, and premises. I'll say this, Bright Crazy Star, then these guys know it. My favorite line is shift your paradigm. You have to shift the way you look at what lens you're looking at your game through. Cypher is cinematic, it's evocative, and it's all about the narrative. So yes, that's absolutely it. You can, get that feeling, bring that emotion, bring that spirit versus worrying about a mechanic. You guys, you want to pick up, Anthony? Marlo said, Marlo House.
Well, we're almost 2 hours in, Dean, so we're probably gonna have to start wrapping this up. First off, I want to thank everyone for participating in this list again. This was a hell of fun. If you guys want more top 10 lists, shoot us over some ideas, either on the YouTube channel or hit us up on the Discord. We always open to more ideas, and I personally love doing these top 10 lists, even though it's a lot of work on the back end, keeping track of everyone's votes on the various social media platforms we work on. So but yeah, if you have any more ideas for top 10 lists, hit me up. I would love to do another one. We love doing these top 10s. This list was surprising. I actually learned a lot. I learned a lot from Chad. I learned a lot from Dean and Al. I learned that Al's fired after this show.
I deserve it.
And we also learned that Al is going to be, we're going to put Al on a regiment, and he's got to read certain books and watch movies.
Any final thoughts before I jump into my spiel?
No, yeah. One before you jump into your spiel, we do have a special message from our buddy KetHup. He is hosting a live stream game tomorrow on his channel. And it's gonna be awesome. He has a lot of great people coming on his show, and as you can see here, I got the graphic up here as Bob World Builder, Dungeoneers Pack, Underground Oracle, Nerd Immersion, Platinum Dragoon, and some guy named KetUp. They're gonna be on KetUp's stream tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern. Let me drop a link to. Definitely check it out. It's called. Is that Lovely Gray? Yeah, Lovely Gray. Lonely? Oh, Lonely. I'm fucking tired. And it's Cyberpunk. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, did you write something? I'm not even looking at the notes. I am so sorry.
No, it's Cyberpunk. Yep.
But yeah, sorry for this very half-assed plug. But yes, definitely check them out. It's gonna be great. KetUp always runs very entertaining games. And yeah, let me drop that link. And yeah, Anthony, you can take it from here.
He has a ton of awesome Bob the World Builder, Dungeons Pack, Jets from Underground Oracle, Nerd Emergent, Platinum Dragon X, some KetHup guy. Yeah, definitely go check it out because it's going to be freaking awesome. And I'm going to be in the chat busting KetHup's chops, so I need help busting his chops. So meet me over there and we'll bust KetHup's chops together.
At what time? Say the time again.
8 p.m. Eastern.
Time.
Nice.
Matter of fact, after this show, we'll form a group of the KetHup Busted Chops committee, and we'll formulate a plan on how best to bust his chops.
Sounds good to me.
If you like and you like us, and you like what we do, join the Cypher Unlimited Discord server for all things Monica games. We have the largest fan-run Discord server. Now we're getting close to 6,000 people, y'all. Join the Discord server. It's going to great place to talk about MCG games, great place to find games to play, just a great community all in all to chat. But if Discord's not for you, join our Facebook group. We got about 1,000 people there, and there's great conversations being had there daily as well. If you want to support us financially in some way, our videos are always free, but you can give us a little donation on Ko-fi, and it helps us out with little things like Zoom costs, and we're going to need it because Zoom just broke down on us today, right? Or visit our online store and pick up some cool Cypher Unlimited merch like this shirt I and Dean got on, or this hat I got on. Or give us a follow here on Twitch. You'll greatly appreciate it. Or go to our YouTube channel and like, share, and subscribe there. We're trying to, build up our YouTube account there. We'll really, really appreciate it if you give us a follow, give us a subscription on YouTube. We really, really trying to bring our numbers up there. We'll greatly, greatly appreciate it. Even if you don't like us, go and sub and tell us how much you hate us every day on every one of our videos. We okay with it, as long as you sub. And last but not least, we love you guys.
Any final words, Dean?
Good night, and thank you.
And yeah, thank you guys so much for stopping by. This was an excellent talk. Definitely learned of some RPGs I need to pick up and will be picking up soon. So yeah, thank you again. And from us at the CU, we will see you later.